In this video, I'm going to start developing my homepage header, which is the top area, based on my wireframe that I designed here. This is how my wireframe looks, and this is the grid that I used to design it. The overall wireframe is 1200 pixels wide. Each of these squares is 100 pixels. So I can see that my header is 200 pixels tall. It has a gray colored background, which I may replace with an image background later. It has my logo, my site title, and a navigation menu. The width of all this content from the left edge of the logo to the right edge of my title and menu is 10 of these squares, which makes it 1000 pixels. We're going to define this look and feel of the header using CSS styles in Dreamweaver. I'm using Dreamweaver CC 2015. If you're using a different version, then your interface may be slightly different, but the concepts of CSS and HTML remain the same. So let's begin. First, I need to create a style sheet to start defining the styles for my page. Right now it looks like this, and I need to transform it to look like this. And apart from adding all these images and content, most of the styling will come from CSS. So first I need to create that style sheet. In Dreamweaver, I go up to the CSS designer up on the right. The first thing I need to do is to add a source for all my styles. In my case, I'm going to add an external file, a CSS file that will hold all the styles for all of my website pages. So I begin here, create a new CSS file. I want to make sure that it is in my website root, and as I said in the previous video, if you're not in this folder, you can just click site root to automatically get there. And then I click OK. So I have a style sheet now, and it shows up in sources, and it also shows up right here next to my source code. Right now it's pretty much empty. So I'm going to start by defining a style for my header. To define any styles, you need to first select the element that you're going to style, add a selector for it, and then add the properties. The best way to do this in the newer versions of Dreamweaver is to expand this interface so you can access the visual CSS designer. What I'm going to do is go up here and change my workspace to design. Notice how that expanded my CSS designer area. And I'm going to be able to use the visual CSS designer, which is much more user-friendly. So in my style.css, I first need to add a selector for my header. So the easiest way to do that is I go up here, click inside my header, and then come down to these selection buttons. I click on the header. Notice how that selects my header. It highlights it both in the design view and in the code view. And then I come up to the right and add a selector. Now Dreamweaver is giving me the selector that says body header, which means the header contained inside my body tag. Since I have only one header on my page, I could even remove body and say header, since there is only one header on my page and it causes no ambiguity. But I could go either way. I could leave in the body or leave it out. For now, I'll leave it out. And now I have to click on header. Now I can add the properties. So to access the really user-friendly visual interface of the CSS Designer, I need to turn off this checkbox that says Show Only Set Properties. Now, I get all these different sections under my properties: layout, text, border, background, and more. First, I'm going to start with the layout. I want my header to stretch from end to end, no matter how big the browser window gets. In other words, I want my header to be, this gray background to be fluid and adapt to the size of the browser window. The way to do that is to tell CSS that the width of my header should be 100% of my window. Okay? My height, as I said before, is 200 pixels. So with header selected, I go up to the layout properties and set my width. Now when I click here, Dreamweaver asks me what units do I want to use for my width. I choose percent and I type in 100. This sets the width of my header to 100%. Since Dreamweaver was already showing me the header and all content stretched across the window, nothing updated here. But you'll see the difference when we preview it in the browser. I'm going to set my height in pixels to 200. Notice how that immediately resized my header. I will also set my background color. In Photoshop, I go and choose my background color, click on the color swatch, and notice down here next to the hashtag sign, this color that I see here is web color. So I just need to copy this code. Makes it really easy to set colors on my web page using Dreamweaver. I go back to Dreamweaver, go to the background tab, and under background color, I'll click here and paste. I just need to add the hash sign before it, hit enter, and there you go. I have my gray background here. At this point, I want to save both my web page and the CSS, and the quick way to do that is to go up to File, Save All. So both my HTML and CSS got saved. Next, inside my header, even though it stretches from end to end, my content inside my header is fixed within these dimensions, and I want these dimensions to be the same across my header, my section, and my footer. So I want to define a box or an area inside my header that will contain my logo, my title, and my menu. To do this, I will use a div tag or a page division that contains all of these. In Dreamweaver, I already have my text for my title. I also have a placeholder for my header menu. I want to create a div that contains both of these, and then I will size it to 1000 pixels. To do this, I'm going to select my text and my menu. Notice in my code view, it's selecting both of them. Now I want to insert a new div that contains all the stuff that I've selected. To do this, I go to Insert, Div. Now, in the Insert Div options, since I had selected everything that should be contained inside the div, I choose Wrap Around Selection as my insertion option. I'm also going to add a class to this div. Let me show you why.